Yo, what's up YouTube? It's your boy Damontae bringing you a banger. Don't forget to go follow on my Twitch, please. Here you will never miss out on daily Payday content. The best Sociopath builds. Might we start with some tips? So right off the rip in this build, you have 2-shot armor with 255, meaning 225 hits you and you have armor left over. Now this build also has 3-shot armor in many forms, and I will be listing them in here in just a moment. The armor that you regen in this build actually is around 60, and with the damage reduction that the Perk Deck is offering you, the light units that damage you for about 67.5 damage, you'll be able to regen these in a singular kill, and this is, more based on your damage reduction value. Inside Sociopath, you get a melee damage increase that's based on the 1 second after you've hit your first melee, so you can consecutively spam the 1 second melee and continuously get damage increase. You have Panic, which is triggered on kills, and if you're able to kill a lot and trigger a lot of Panic, it'll stop the cops from even aiming at you and dealing damage to you and your teammates, and this will prevent damage from happening for just a few seconds. Now inside of the HP based builds that we do have inside of this video, there will be 3-shot HP in the ways that we'll be showing you just now. So since I've mentioned the 3-shot HP, I'm just going to go over it immediately. You have the 12% from inside your deck, you have the 8% from inside your deck. We're going to be grabbing things like Underdog from the build so that we can get another 10%, and then I'm also going to be getting first aid kits for another 10%, so getting us around a 40% damage reduction, which is changing 225 into 135. So 299 minus 135 equals 164. If we get shot by the same damage value, then we'll be left with a 3-shot HP value. Now I'm going to cover all of the damage reductions that we are accomplishing inside of the Sociopath build. The first one is 8%, and this is the 3rd card in your deck, which is medium range specifically, and it does come in handy. It changes 225 to 207. One of your first cards in the deck offers you 12% damage reduction, and this is when you have 3 or more cops surrounding you. This will change 225 into 198 damage. The 12% and the 8% pairing together will make around a 20%. This will change 225 into 180 damage. When we do decide to grab Frenzy in this build, or any of the builds, it'll be Aced Frenzy for 25%, which will make 225 into 168. If we have the 20% from the Perk Deck and we're grabbing another 10% from, first aid kits or Underdog, then we're changing from 30% to 25 into 157.5. If we have 25% from Frenzy, plus another 10% from Underdog or First Aid Kits, this makes 35%, changing 225 into 146.25. If we take 25% from Frenzy, the 1st and 3rd card's ability giving us a 20%, that's 45%, changing 225 into 123.75. Now, if we take 25% from Frenzy, plus the deck's 1st and 3rd card ability, which is giving us a 45% at this, amount, then we grab Underdog or First Aid Kits for a 10%, making 225 into 101.25. So to go back to the question of the 3-shot armor and how, we do just want to grab ourselves the Frenzy, Aced specifically, and then have the 1st and 3rd card ability trigger so that we get an extra 20% from the deck, equaling a 45%. That makes 225 into 123.75 as we just mentioned, so if you take 255 minus 123.75, you get left with 131.25, which equals 3-shot armor. So if you just have Frenzy that changes 225 into 168, if you have, Bullseye Ace, which we do in these builds, and you're getting a medium ranged kill, you'll be getting 85 armor back on a regen. So if you take 255 minus 168, that'll leave you with 87. But if you were to get 85 armor regen, that leaves you with 172, which will equal into 3-shot armor. And then lastly, if you have the Frenzy, the Dex, triggering 20%, and you have Underdog triggering for 10%, you're changing 225 into 101.25. So if you have 255 minus a 101.25, you get left with 153.75, which equals 3-shot armor. I'm going to also include that if you guys had a crew chief or a maniac offering you 24 absorption or the crew chief's damage reduction, you can actually get more damage reduction inside Socio / absorption, which can give you some more goofy numbers, or it can also get you even maybe something crazier. Now, let's get into the builds for the Sociopath that I have here. So I do appreciate everyone that has stopped into the video. Hopefully you guys will leave it a like, a sub, and comment if you are new here. This is the AK SMG build for Sociopath. This build has an AR and SMG kind of pairing together to effectively handle all ranges of combat. With the primary rifle that I use, once again, being the AK rifle, it has pretty good accuracy, really high stability, with rough medium damage is what I would call it. About 60 is usually, the medium range. We grabbed the Kxng SMG as a sidearm, which has 100 damage type, and you have multiple options to choose from with these SMGs. We grabbed the Kxng having 45 bullets inside the mag, which does help a lot during the times that you have to reload the primary rifle. The SMG does have, the ability to regen ammo for your primary rifle, while it's not really the best ammo pool of itself. But together, you can regen both guns' ammo by just effectively using them both. Lastly, the SMG helps with ranged combat sometimes, and just because of the higher damage of this. But on the flip side, it does really come helpful with inside, dozers in this build. We have Zerk, and that makes easy work of common cops, special units, and as I mentioned, dealing massive damage to, bulldozers. And I have body expertise. Pairing that with Zerk damage output, you can get some even crazier damage. Lastly, inside this setup, you can be extremely aggressive since you do have 3-shot armor from damage reduction inside the perk deck, as I've referenced inside the tips section of the video. Now, let's go over the skills for the build here. I go for combat medic in case I get painkiller shouted. I'm grabbing stable shot for stability and rifleman because I like to snap a zoom. I grab things like resilience, getting myself to shock and awe for the passive armor regen, while also getting bullseye and Iron Man for the 2-shot armor, and 3-shot armor with having the underdog trigger. We grab things like body expertise, so that, as I've mentioned, we have massive damage output when we pair this with Zerk. We grab things like unseen strike for crits inside the ICTV, while also getting things like the professional and high value target. And then I grab things like Frenzy, Berserker, so I have massive damage, and I'm getting things like Bloodthirst and Pumping Iron for the, the bulldozer kills. You have plenty of options to choose from for what gun that you're using, but this is the AK rifle is what I chose. We went for the modern barrel, we go for the bigger the better suppressor. As for the boost, I went accuracy. I go for the scope mount because if you do not go for the scope mount, your sight will be in the front of the gun and it's a little disorienting. I go for the Keymont rail, which is giving me accuracy and stability. I go for the LED combo for the stability increase. I then grab the AK plastic grip for the accuracy increase. Then I grab the speed pull mag. It just kind of fits together with Sociopath having 1 second armor regen, so therefore I always want to be able to shoot. You could go secondary sights, but it's not necessary for what I'm using. I go for the Seymour sight, purely optional. As for the stocks, you have plenty of options here, but I go for the classic stock. Another good choice would be the wooden sniper stock. And you can be throwing on this new upper receiver, but you will cost a little bit of accuracy, so you have to decide if the damage is worth. Now as for the secondary here, you have multiple options to choose from as secondary 100 damage SMGs, but I went for the Kxng using the bigger the better suppressor, while having the accuracy increase. Then I go for the scope mount for the same reason as the primary, while grabbing the Moscow special rail for the stability increase. Then I grab the LED combo for more stability, while having the AK plastic grip for accuracy increase. Then I go for the speed pull mag for the same reason as the primary. It plays really well for Sociopath, so that's why we're using it. As for sights, they're purely optional, but I'm using the Seymour. The stocks, you can once again choose out of the same two stocks, being the classic stock and or the wooden sniper stock, both giving you great attributes. And then lastly, if you really wanted to, you can throw on the upper receiver without really minusing accuracy because you still keep 100. But once again, you'll need to decide if this is even worth. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this build. Let me know if you do in the comment section below. The Sociopath LMG build. A good LMG gunner is capable of controlling a group by staggering them, knocking them over, dealing enough damage to them so that the cops will start rolling around on the ground, killing them, coming back to the grounded cops and killing them and finishing them off, and then doing this will make a difference in your survival when using an LMG. This setup does bring a secondary 100 damage SMG, which you have many choices to choose from in these guns. I just went for the Kxng, and it does have a fast fire rate that it brings. While having the KSP for 200 plus rounds, you can consistently shoot and hold off the cops at a distance that'll keep you safe and keeps you from taking damage. We have Zerk inside this build, so it'll make easy work of the common cops and the specials. You also have massive damage output to deal to dozers because of your Zerk output, and you have body expertise. Lastly, inside this build you can be extremely aggressive because you have 3-shot armor from the damage reduction inside the perk deck as we explained in the tips section, plus the armor regen, and having an LMG with 200 rounds, it's like you're getting armor every time you're killing. It's just based on the 1 second time frame obviously. Now, let's go over the skills for the build here. I go for Combat Medic in case of Painkiller Shout, while grabbing things like Stable Shot and Rifleman because I like to use these in my builds. I grab Underdog Ace so that I have a 3-shot armor ability, while also getting Iron Man for 2-shot armor. I grab things like Shock and Awe for the passive armor regen and staggering cops. I grab Body Expertise while having Lock and Load, Surefire, and Steady Grip. Pairing these together with Unseen Strike, High Value Target, Dozers, and specials are no issue. I do grab things like the Professional so that I can snap the zoom even quicker and have more stability accuracy. Lastly, I'm grabbing things like Frenzy Berserker so that I can have massive damage output, pairing it with the Body Expertise and the crits. And then I grab Bloodthirst plus Pumping Iron for the dozers. Now, for the LMGs here you have a few choices, but for good ones you want to kind of stick with the KSP, Buzzsaw, M60, the new LMG, things like that. I'm using the long barrel on this one. I go for the bigger the better suppressor for the accuracy stability. Bipod because why not. I use the stability increase. We don't go for the railed foregrip, but we do grab the LED combo. As for the stocks, you have a few options, but I go for the solid stock, giving me a stability increase. Now as for the secondary here, you have multiple options to choose from as secondary 100 damage SMGs, but I went for the Kxng using the bigger the better suppressor, while having the accuracy increase. Then I go for the scope mount for the same reason as the primary, while grabbing the Moscow special rail for the stability increase. Then I grab the LED combo for more stability, while having the AK plastic grip for accuracy increase. Then I go for the speed pull mag for the same reason as the primary. It plays really well for Sociopath, so that's why we're using it. As for sights, they're purely optional, but I'm using the Seymour. The Crit Sociopath CTV setup. This setup brings 2-shot armor inside of the CTV armor set, while having full crits and body expertise, pairing it with Zerk for massive damage output inside of crit concealed weapons. While the setup is made to fight the boss on Mountain Master, it can function inside of close quarters maps while having 2-shot armor to work with. We bring the Car 4 rifle inside of this setup because it's concealment value. It also brings about 60 damage pool, which is really nice, and you have multiple options of different guns to choose from inside this build, as long as you're following the concealment. Something like the Valkyrie rifle is a good option. Now as for secondaries, you have some good choices too. The Micro Uzi is a good one to choose from. The Wasp SMG is a good one to choose from. Both of them having fast fire rates and great damage outputs, which will match with your body expertise, crits, and Zerk. While using melee skills on dozers, you have full crits, something that, pairing together with Bloodthirst, and you can stack up, kills on that. You can literally run up and one-hit dozers because of the crit Bloodthirst stack. But it's going to be just common that you're going to be two-hitting, dozers in the boss. Now, let's go over the skills for the build here. I have Stable Shot for stability increase and the Snap to Zoom. I grab things like the Iron Man basic, while also grabbing things like Bullseye Aced and Shock and Awe for the, armor regen and the staggering of the cops. Then I grab body expertise, as I've already mentioned, so that I have decent damage with the crit weapons that I'm bringing. I grab full crits, as I've already previously mentioned, so that my guns have massive damage output. While also being mindful of the concealment skills that I had to grab. Lastly, I'm grabbing things like Frenzy Berserker for massive damage output, pairing it together with the crits, pairing it together with the body expertise, and then lastly I have Pumping Iron Bloodthirst for the dozers. Now going over the weapons here, as I mentioned, you have decent options to choose from for concealed weapons, but this is the Car 4. I'm using the medium suppressor, which is giving me stability and not as much concealment minus. As for the boost, we're using a concealment. As for the foregrips, we're using the Emo foregrip for the, accuracy, stability, and the concealment increase. Next, I'm using the Compact Laser for no statistical change. I'm using the Titanium Skeletal Grip for the accuracy increase and the concealment increase. Next, I am using the Thrust Lower Receiver for just damage increase. Next, I'm grabbing the Speed Pull Magazine for just the quicker reload times. And then I'm going to be throwing this on here because this will give me enough concealment to actually get full crits inside the build. This is purely optional, but you can get the Seymour sight for more stability. As for the stocks, I'm using the folding stock, which is just for concealment. And then lastly, your upper receiver is going to be the LW receiver, which is giving you accuracy and stability. Now as for the secondary, I've already mentioned I'm using the Wasp, which I'm going to be grabbing a concealment increase. Next, we grab the Elusive set, which is the Whisper 9 suppressor, which is giving us an accuracy increase, a damage increase, a stability increase, and not as much concealment minus. And that is it. The Heavy Ballistic Vest 2-shot Socio build. This build has an AR SMG pairing together to effectively handle all ranges of damage. With the primary rifle being the AUG, it has high accuracy, high stability, and shooting about medium damage at this style of rifle. We grab the Tech 9 SMG, but you have a lot of options to choose from with the 40 to 50 damage type of SMGs. We have a choice between the Heavy Ballistic Vest and the Flak Jacket for 135 armor, but the Flak Jacket has slower passive regen with more steadiness and slightly less movement speed, while the Heavy Ballistic Vest gives you more movement speed, faster passive regen, and slightly less steadiness. This build does bring full crits for massive damage output. Having Zerk trigger with the crits gives us crazy killing ability to deal lots of damages to dozers, deal lots of damage to the common cops and the special units. Inside this setup, you need a certain amount of damage reduction so you can get 2-shot armor inside of 135 armor amount. So we grab first aid kits to make this more consistent with the 10% damage reduction value that it gives us. We do pair this with 25% from Frenzy, and then we get a 20% from the Perk Deck, making it a 123.75 damage value as the common value that we get hit with. And then if we pair the extra damage reduction, then we get the 101.25 damage value. Now, let's go over the skills for the build here. As I mentioned, I grabbed Quick Fix for 10% damage reduction for 2 minutes to make my, consistent 10% damage reduction so that I get 2-shot armor in a consistent way. While grabbing things like the Stable Shot for more stability, I also grab Underdog Ace for an extra 10%, which will actually trigger both of them at once, which can actually give me more damage reduction than I've already listed. Next, I'm grabbing things like Iron Man and Die Hard so that I can get 135 armor value inside of the Heavy Ballistic Vest. Next, I'm grabbing Shock and Awe for quicker passive regen and the ability to stagger the cops. Next, I'm grabbing Hardware Expert just because it was a single point that I had. I grabbed things like Steady Grip, Surefire, and Fire Control. While being mindful of my concealment, I didn't really need to ace inner pockets in this situation, but I do grab things like Optical Illusions, while having Low Blow, Aced, and Unseen Strike for full crits, pairing things like High Value Target in the Professional so that I can have bigger damages on my specials and have more accuracy in my guns. Lastly, I'm grabbing things like Frenzy and Berserker for the damage increases, while having Bloodthirst for just, being able to stack up melee damage, and this is more used inside of the dozer terms. For the AUG here, you have multiple choices of actual guns that you can use, but I'm using the short barrel on this, which is giving me stability and concealment. As for the barrel extender, I'm using a suppressor, the bigger the better, for the accuracy, stability, and concealment. Next, as the boost, I'm using a concealment. As for the gadget, I'm using the compact laser. For the lower receiver, I did go for the Raptor polymer body, which gives me damage, accuracy, stability, and it minuses 2 concealment, but we are still able to manage this in this build. Next, I grabbed the speed pull mag, which gives me faster reloads, which will allow me to continuously deal damage and kill the enemies. I grabbed the 45-degree sight for the concealment increase. This is purely optional as well, the Seymour sight. As for the secondaries, as I've already mentioned, you've got plenty of choices with this damage category. I'm using the short barrel, which is giving me a concealment increase. Next, I'm using the medium suppressor so that I have decent statistics while also getting 32 concealment. As for the boost, I use a concealment increase. As for the gadget, I'm using a compact laser. You can alternatively give yourself an extended mag, but it does cost you some concealment. I don't use any sights and I don't use any stock because I was trying to be mindful of the concealment. The Dodge Sociopath build. As silly as it may seem, just give this build a chance. This build does yield 3-shot HP, which was covered in the tip section of the video. A good LMG gunner is capable of controlling a group by staggering them, knocking over the cops, dealing enough damage to them so that they're rolling around on the ground, killing them, coming back to the grounded cops and finishing them off. Doing this will make a difference with your survival when using an LMG. Since we do have 25% dodge, it is good to know that on that 25% dodge, you can dodge 4 in a row on a 1/256 chance of happening. With most heists being about 10 to 15 minutes long, keep this in mind, grace period is 0.35, so if you have a 1 second time period, that means 3 shots of the 225 are capable of hitting you. So if you have 60 seconds of a time period, that's possible for 180 shots to hit you. So knowing that, you can have a chance of 4 dodges in a row on a 1/256 chance. Playing around with this knowledge can come in handy only if you're capable of knowing the probabilities and the chances that are possible on this dodge value and be able to identify which probability chance that you're on. This build at a high has a 25% dodge, 3-shot HP with a Joker under circumstance of damage reduction triggering, and the math was at the tip section of the video. You have 1-shot armor pairing together with first aid kits, and melee kills grant you HP regen. With all of these in your arsenal, you just have to play with a bit of creativity to be able to survive. Now, let's go over the skills for the build here. I grab things like quick fix and uppers so that I can, have instantaneous HP regen, while grabbing things like partners in crime so I have an HP increase. While grabbing things like bullseye for armor regen and shock and awe for the passive regen. I grab things like body expertise and surefire so that I can easily kill some enemies. While grabbing things like sneaky bastard for the 25% dodge chance added with the duck and cover. Then I grab things like optical illusions, low blow for full crits with unseen strike, pairing it together with high value target. Then I grab bloodthirst so that I can stack up my melee ability so that when I do melee things, I can kill those people. Now as for the LMG, I'm using the SG Verse deck. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but this is the one, the belt fed, aim down the sights LMG. I'm using the Cult barrel, which is giving me damage, accuracy, and stability. Next, I'm using the bigger the better suppressor for the accuracy, stability, and concealment values. As for the boost, I actually went for an accuracy increase. I go for the compact laser because you can actually put anything on here. That's what I'm doing. You guys have the option. As for the sights, I'm using the Seymour sight, purely optional. As for the stock, it's a situation where you can change it, I just am not playing with it that way. Next, as a secondary SMG, this one actually gets crazy good concealment, I should say, and stability, but this is one of those guns that kind of fits really well with the build, and if you do change it, it kind of may not be as good, but you can change it. Just keep that in mind. You can change this weapon. I'm using the medium suppressor with a concealment increase. Next, I grab the aftermarket shorty for stability. Then I grab the compact laser while grabbing the skeletal grip for more concealment. I grab the lower receiver that gives me a stability increase, a damage increase, and accuracy increase. I grab the speed pull mag because we are Sociopath, and this actually works really well when we need to reload quickly and we can pull it out instead of the LMG. I don't actually use any sights on this build, but in the stock scenario, I'm using the shorter than short stock. This gives me a concealment value of 30. And then lastly, I'm using the LW receiver, which is accuracy and stability, giving us 100 stability in this build. The HP ICTV Sociopath build. This actually comes in with 3-shot HP inside of the build, and the math was at the tip section of the video. A good LMG gunner is capable of controlling a group with staggering them, knocking them over by dealing enough damage, and the cops are rolling around on the ground, killing them, coming back to the grounded cops and finishing them off. Doing this will be a difference of survival when using an LMG. With this build, we do have 2-shot armor inside of the setup naturally because we have 255 armor. This is pairing with the 2-shot HP and the 3-shot HP values that we'll be playing with inside the build. Generally, I do go for Zerk setups when it comes for Sociopath and armor, but I understand where HP Sociopath is strong and can be valuable. This build, as I mentioned, is 2-shot armor and 3-shot HP, which is really strong as an overall setup. That makes 5-shot HP, or 5 shots of 225 build is what I meant to say. Pair this build with first aid kits, and it lets you be aggressive and handle some objectives that when you're placing the first aid kits at your feet, you can't, be killed because your armor and damage reduction values will save you, and then after you do get exposed to the HP shots, your first aid kit will heal you. But getting first aid kits in this build will cost you some, change to your skills. Now, let's go into the skills for the build here. I grabbed things like Hostage Taker for constant HP regen while also having Partners in Crime for the extra HP increase. You can get Iron Man for 2-shot armor naturally inside the build, while I grab things like Bullseye Ace so that I can get massive armor regen, being 85 armor at max, and then I grab Shock and Awe for the staggering ability. I grab Underdog Ace for extra damage reduction, which is kind of useful in the build. I use things like Body Expertise, Surefire, Lock and Load, and Steady Grip to make my LMG pretty stable and worth using. Next I'm using duck and cover while relying on the 10% movement speed from a joker. I grab things like the professional and high value target to make, easy work of specials and have great accuracy stability. While also grabbing things like crits to make bigger damage outputs with the body expertise. Lastly, I'm grabbing bloodthirst so that when I do go to melee kill people, it'll kill them and give me my life back quickly.
Look at this goat right here, tradesman.
Now, for the LMGs here, you have a few choices, but for good ones, you want to kind of stick with the, KSP, Buzzsaw, M60, the new LMG, things like that. I'm using the long barrel on this one. I go for the bigger the better suppressor for the accuracy stability. Bipod because why not? I use the stability increase.
That's animal cruelty.
We don't go for the railed foregrip, but we do grab the LED combo. As for the stocks, you have a few options, but I go for the solid stock, giving me a stability increase. Now as for the secondary here, you have plenty choices of the secondary 100 damage SMGs, but I'm going for the Jackal, as I went for the Civilian barrel, which gives me damage, accuracy. Next I go for the bigger the better, which is damage for accuracy and stability. As for the boost, I go for accuracy. As for gadget, I'm using LED combo for stability increase. Next, I am using the extended mag because there's only 2 options and you don't get a fast mag option, so therefore extended. Next, I go for the specular sight, aka the red dot. It's purely optional. I go for the civilian stock for the stability increase. And then lastly, I do go for the vertical grip, which is one of a kind thing, and it gives me a laser and a flashlight together.
I'm going to take it all off as a whole.
The Socio sniper rifle build. I am using a semi-automatic sniper for the constantly being capable of dealing damage and killing the enemies, and this will also pair together with the 1-second armor regen that the Socio does have. Also, the Gray's ability makes panicking cops all over the place, and Sociopath, you want to be panicking as many cops as you can so that you can prevent damage for yourself and prevent damage for your teammates, and just prevent all the cops from dealing damage for a few seconds. We grab an SMG sidearm for close quarters fighting, or if you need to fight a dozer back or something in this scenario. If you do actually get too close to a dozer, you'll be able to just melee kill them within 2 shots. So it just depends on positioning for how you'll be dealing with these situations. The sniper is also great for close quarters fighting, so if you're able to hit your headshots and not miss, it will clear out the groups like crazy as long as you're hitting the headshots. Inside of this setup, you can be really aggressive since you have 3-shot armor from damage reduction from the perk, and you have Frenzy, Bullseye Aced, and Underdog inside the builds. Now, let's go over the skills for the build here. I'm grabbing Grays as I mentioned for my main source of damage and killing ability inside the build, while grabbing things like aggressive reload to constantly reload my weapon and be matching the 1-second regen timer. Next, I grab things like Underdog so that I get extra damage reduction so I can offer myself 3-shot armor. And I grab myself Iron Man for 2-shot armor naturally. And as I mentioned for, 3-shot armor, I'm using Bullseye as well. Next, I'm grabbing things like Fire Control so that when I hip fire my sniper, it's extremely accurate.
Nice.
And then I grab things like Duck and Cover Parkour so I can move really quickly inside ICTV. While grabbing things like the Professional, High Value Target to target specials, and have crits inside my sniper. Lastly, I'm grabbing Frenzy Berserker for massive damage outputs with Grays and the crits, and then I'm grabbing Bloodthirst so that if I do run into dozers, I can chop them up. You have all the choices of semi-automatic snipers to choose from, but I go for the Contractor since it has 20 rounds. I'm using the Suppressor just because of the Suppressor skills. Next, I'm using Accuracy Increase, while grabbing the LED combo for Stability Increase, which to me doesn't matter on a semi-automatic. Lastly, for the grips, I'm using the Pro Grip for accuracy and stability increase. You can use secondary sights, I did not. I go for the Seymour sight, purely optional. As for the stocks, you got some good choices in here, but I go for the War-Torn stock, which is mostly for the accuracy increase. Now as for the SMGs here, plenty of choices of 100 damage SMGs, but I'm going for the Tatanka. This one I'm using the bigger the better for the accuracy and stability increase. As for boost, we're using an accuracy. As for gadgets, the LED combo. For grips, we're using the aluminum grip for the accuracy increase. You can go secondary sights, I did not. For the sighted though, I go for the Seymour sight. And this is the only stock option for the gun, so no reason not to go for it. Get 4 accuracy increase, plus a 1 concealment. The shotgun Sociopath build. We went for the old meta setup being, shotgun and judge shotgun. We don't go for the ISMA, however. We go for the shotgun that allows us to one-shot kill with the Zerk ability and shotgun impact skill. Shotgun being the old meta still performs really well inside death sentence, being the biggest downfall is the damage over range. The primary shotgun is used to fight all the common cops and specials, while fighting dozers on the other hand, you must be careful with the ammo pool that you have at the moment, since dozers will just eat up your ammo. Group killing ability is next to none when having, shotguns shoot down a hallway and hit everything. Since I'm bringing Surefire with Buckshot in this build, we're having the stack up of overkill damage output, pairing it with crits, pairing it with Zerk for even more damage increase. So when we do, shoot down a hallway, it lets my Surefire just rip through the armor and deal big damage to the enemies. I grabbed the Judge secondary with fire rounds to deal with shields mostly, but it does come in handy with dealing with groups of cops for ammo regens. The Judge can hit snipers from across the map as well, and it just, requires you to deal enough damage to them to kill them, since the fire don't insta-burn anymore at farther range. But you're still capable of doing it, it just may take, 3 or 4 shots. We bring a fire shotgun secondary as I mentioned, but it's mostly just to refill my primary and, to spam at the groups. Another good thing about having fire in a build is that it'll have a ability to crowd control, which will allow you the freedom to move and your teammates the freedom to move while still dealing damage and killing things. Now lastly, inside this setup you can be really aggressive because you have 3-shot armor from damage reduction from the perk deck and having frenzy, plus bullseye or having underdog aced or something along these lines. Now let's get into the skills for the build here. I grab combat medic in case I get painkiller shouted, while grabbing things like stable shot for the stability increase. Next I'm grabbing underdog aced as I mentioned so that I can get 3-shot armor in this build. And I'm grabbing things like shotgun impact so that my shotgun has the one-shot kill ability when having overkill Zerk increase. Next I'm grabbing Iron Man for 2-shot armor naturally and having bullseye ace as we've mentioned in the tips section for 3-shot armor. Next I'm grabbing Surefire ace so that my buckshot can armor pierce, and then I'm grabbing steady grip so that I can get 16 stability. Next I'm getting optical illusions. Not really needed in this scenario, but I didn't have to grab the professional obviously, so I needed to grab something to get to crits, so I went ahead and grabbed optical illusion. Next I'm grabbing things like frenzy, berserker for massive damage outputs, while also having bloodthirst for the dozers when I stack up my kills. Now as for the shotgun that I'm using here, this is the VD12. The damage is at a damage value that allows us to one-shot kill things when we have the overkill skill and when we have Zerk triggered. As I've already mentioned, we're using buckshot rounds in this gun, so we get a damage increase. Next I'm using the long barrel for more damage increase. Yes, it gives us accuracy, but we don't really need accuracy, but it is what it is. I grab stability from this as well. Next I'm getting the horizontal leveler. This one's purely optional, but I like the way it spreads when it's, flat, so that's why I'm using this. Obviously you get the choice of using any of them. Oh yeah, as for a boost, I use a minus accuracy. As for the custom, I use auto fire for damage increase and more minus accuracy. Alternatively, you can use the elusive set, but I am not using the exclusive set. You can also go for the foregrip for more accuracy increase, but I am not going for it. Next, I'm going for the LED combo for the stability increase. Then I'm using the ergo foregrip for more stability increase. You can put a sight on here for more stability. I'm already at 100, so therefore I did not go for a sight. Lastly, we can use the wide stock for 4 stability increase.
So therefore, if they get your fingerprints in a couple years from
Now, as for the secondary judge here, there's literally nothing you need to put on it besides the Dragon's Breath rounds. Mine is a legendary skin, so I have very minimum modifications on it. But with that being said, all you really need once again is just the Dragon's Breath.
to begin with. Can't tell me you ain't got a job. Ooh, you could be a hitman for the mafia.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys do enjoy all these sociopath builds. Please leave me a like, sub to me, comment if you're new here, and comment if you guys are my boys. Also, don't forget to go watch my weekly build series here on my YouTube. I also have the How To from a 10K Hour Player, which is the best build series. Then I have the weekly videos series. I also have High Crime Spree playlist here. And then lastly, I have speedruns and DSOD solos here. Please go to the community section also on my YouTube to vote for the next Perk Deck video.